Also because we eat certain foods that interfere with our oxygen availability. For instance, alcohol. Even a small amount of alcohol. I'm not telling you to be teetotalers. I'm just saying let's know the truth about it. Some people will make it look like a little alcohol will be good for you because we can always find one way in which it is potentially beneficial and take it out of the general concept of health. That's why people who want to sell you wine, and it's a huge industry, the wine industry, will always focus on the potential benefit while ignoring how it's poisoning you at the same time. You can eat all the antioxidant-rich poison mushrooms in the world. They will still damage you more than they will help you. It is a mistake to believe people who are selling you something that is man-made and telling you what you want to hear because you already are addicted to it. The inconvenient truth should not be what you follow. If you want the truth, normally you should be a little more open towards the information that is not comfortable to hear. It's more likely to be the truth because there's very little to sell here. The truth does not sell too many things that are man-made, that have long shelf life, that are bottled and packaged. The truth comes from nature more than it does from the factory. And people don't want to hear that once they love their beer or their chocolate or their coffee. But right now we're only talking about alcohol and how it interferes with oxygen utilization in the tissues. Because we eat a lot of fermented foods that also have a little alcohol in them, and because we drink wine at least once a day, or else it's not a real meal, we end up oftentimes reducing our oxygen availability, and our tissues are depleted of oxygen. What about insulin? We talked about insulin in our pristine utopia. Insulin is crucial to bring glucose continuously into our tissues. We need glucose to make energy all the time. When you don't have enough glucose, you feel horrible. You will go to the first junk food store on your way and get in there and eat whatever is there. You won't even look at the ingredients because there's no time. You have to eat right now to increase your blood sugar level. You're so irritable. You're so intolerable. Nobody wants to be around you. But you have to eat now, or else you're going to murder someone. People get into this severe instant fatigue. They want to zonk out. And it's basically because of reactive hypoglycemia related to insufficient glucose. And the glucose comes thanks to insulin. Insulin brings glucose into your cells. What can refute or negate the work of insulin? Cortisol, stress hormones. Our diet leads to secretion of cortisol, especially if you eat a lot of animal proteins. But anytime you have emotional stress, you secrete cortisol, and cortisol negates the action of insulin. Many of us are continuously under emotional, social, or spiritual stress. And because of that, we have no regular glucose coming in, insufficient insulin or insufficient insulin activity. We have not enough oxygen in the tissues, and therefore we cannot manufacture energy from glucose in the presence of oxygen, which is necessary for oxidizing our fats and carbohydrates in this utopian paradise we described earlier. Now that we don't have it, we have no choice but to make energy in a different way, more dirty. This way is not involving the oxygen that we need so much. It does not involve the Krebs cycle. It involves a different pathway. And the result of that pathway is the formation of another acid called lactic acid, and another acid called beta-hydroxybutyric acid, and another acid called pyruvic acid. Those acids that are secreted into our tissues, into our cells, as a result of metabolizing fats and carbohydrates without sufficient oxygen and without sufficient insulin and under situation of stress. That is when we make really toxic, potent, destructive acids, which I just mentioned the names of, and our body doesn't know how to get rid of them in any easy manner. Those acids build up in our tissues. They cause us to have pain when we try to work out. If you go and exercise too much, you exceed your capacity of providing oxygen to burn your glucose, and you start making lactic acid, which causes pain in your muscle and fatigue, and you cannot go on. If you have fibromyalgia, every time you move 5 steps, you get to the same position, to the same threshold, but much quicker. Every time you have chronic fatigue syndrome, you didn't make enough energy for the same reasons and manufactured those potent acids, causing you pain, but also insufficient energy. So you are tired, you're fatigued. Whenever that happens, the muscles have to break down to release an amino acid called glutamine, which buffers some of those acids a little bit, and that is why you get muscle wasting. It's kind of funny. You exercise excessively in the health club while eating junk food, which lowers your ability to manufacture energy. You make more acid that cause your muscles to waste. So everything you gain from working out, you lose at the same time. It makes no sense. Without a healthy, clean diet and other things we'll talk about, there's no point in going to a health club, especially when most health clubs contain so many gases and toxins, formaldehyde from the carpets, the upholstery, the machines, all the electromagnetic fields and radiation. That's not a health club. It's a poison club. It's a place where you go to bathe in poison while you think that you're sweating to the oldies and think that you'll be healthier for it. Your home is much safer because you can control it better, or at least go to the great outdoors. That's a cleaner environment where you can benefit. Any exercise leads to a lot of buildup of acid because it's a stressful catabolic state. That is why emotional stress is so negative. It makes you shift into a sympathetic nervous system mode instead of a parasympathetic mode. In a sympathetic nervous system mode, you are in a fight or flight mechanism, which means you continuously burn yourself. You burn calories. You need to have more sugar continuously in your blood, so you break down fats and proteins to make sugar. In that process, you poison yourself, you burn all that glucose, and you make those acids. Therefore, sympathetic nervous system leads to significant change for the worse in your metabolic acidosis. Even if it's mild, it's chronic, and it gradually affects you. Even if your kidneys can get rid of some of those acids, they are being damaged trying to save you. That is compensation. Our body always compensates. If you measure the blood pH and it stays the same, it means nothing. You have to actually check the pathology in your organs, the ones that compensate, that take the burden of this stress and try to save you. Because once those organs go into a state of self-destruction, like your adrenal glands from too much stress over a long period of time, like your kidneys for too much acid secretion over time, that's when you start getting severe disease and suddenly you need dialysis. We talked about those who exercise, and I just wanted to mention one more point about them. People exercise and think that in order to build muscle, they need a lot of protein. So they get these whey protein supplements, and you have to be aware that whey protein is causing so much acidity, you'll know why in a minute, that it actually perforates your kidneys. Your kidneys have to get rid of so much acid, such potent acid, that you damage your kidneys directly. Nobody should be consuming whey protein in those quantities or in any quantity. It's basically a waste product of the dairy industry, and they found a way to make a lot more money on that than on milk itself, simply by packaging it nicely and taking advantage of our society's obsession with protein. Please listen to my lecture about the truth about your protein. It's available for free online, or it's available on a double CD. What happens when you actually get protein in your body in excess of the minimal amount necessary for building enzymes and tissue structures? When you have excess of protein, you have to form glucose with it in order to make energy, because the body doesn't know what to do with excess protein. It can only turn it into energy. And if you make more acids from that energy, they will have to be stored in your tissues, meaning in your cells and in the fluid that your cells are bathing in. That's it. That's where the acid can build up. Not in the blood, not in the urine, not in your saliva, but in your tissues. Every time you eat protein and you form energy by oxidizing it, because it is a macronutrient like fats and carbohydrates, it's designed to create energy when you have excess of it. But it has sulfur atoms attached to it. It has nitrogen atoms attached to it. It has phosphorus attached to it. Every time you eat protein and you manufacture energy out of it, you form sulfuric acid. You form phosphoric acid. You form hydrochloric acid. You form acetic acid. And those are really potent, destructive acids that are far more poisonous than the acids we mentioned earlier. They can really damage your tissues, just like acid will damage your face when it hits your face. They are strong, they are potent, they accumulate, and our body does not know how to get rid of them. They are similar to the acid that came from combustion of fats and carbohydrates when we had not sufficient oxygen. Lactic acid, beta-hydroxybutyric acid, pyruvic acid, together with these phosphoric and sulfuric and acetic and hydrochloric acids, are all going to be treated in the same way by our helpless body. What is that way? Only one way. Either we store them in the tissues, causing tissue damage over time, and cellular dysfunction over time, and insufficient oxygen over time, or we get rid of them using something called carbonic salts. Carbonic salts are basically specific positively charged ions like magnesium, potassium, and calcium, which are attached to CO3. So magnesium carbonate, calcium carbonate, potassium carbonate. They are present in our system only if we have them in our diet, if we have them in our water, and if we store them in our system for such an event that should be rare, when we need them in large quantities to offset acid buildup. Unfortunately, in our reality today, we have too many acids formed, too much protein eaten, insufficient oxygen, and a lot of catabolic effect because of stress. We burn too much, too fast, and we eat too much. Every time you eat excess of food, you have too many macronutrients. They have to burn somehow. Some will be stored, but your body will have to burn more because you have more cells or larger cells from gaining weight. Those larger cells will burn more energy on average than a person who has less of those cells or shrunken cells or smaller cells. Therefore, we make even more of those acids all the time. And our food is unfortunately depleted of minerals because of our soil that has been overused, our artificial fertilizers that bind minerals to the earth, not allowing them to come into the plant, and because we eat so many refined foods that are lacking minerals. White flour, white sugar, beer, wine. We have a lot of macronutrients in those foods. But where are the minerals? They've been washed away, eliminated. That's the problem with our food today. Even our most fresh, organic vegetables and fruits don't have enough minerals like they used to. Therefore, the only place we can use to take away its own cations, meaning those positively charged minerals, is the place where we store the most of them, which is the bones. And we start using calcium from the bone continuously. And studies have proven that your diet directly affects the amount of calcium that is secreted in your urine. The more minerals you get in your water, the more magnesium and potassium you get in your food. If the rich foods that are containing these essential minerals are not containing a lot of phosphorus and sulfur and protein, you will be able to offset the acids more effectively without taking away minerals from your bone. And suddenly, you don't have that much calcium coming out in the urine, forming kidney stones and making you osteoporotic. We don't do very well as a society because of the deficiency of those minerals. What they do is they bind the acids. They have a little exchange. I don't want to get into it in details, but there's a little exchange going on which turns the carbonic salts into minerals, mineral salts that can be either stored in the tissues or excreted more easily, plus carbon dioxide, which then the body knows what to do with. So you're forming mineral compounds with the acids. Some of them will be stored in the tissue, some will be eliminated, but you also make even more carbon dioxide to add insult to injury, and your poor kidneys have to deal with the carbonic acid, even from that source, in addition to the other acids. So you have a double whammy with those proteins that become energy. You more than double the types of acid that come out. And as a society, we suffer. And here we see those x-rays. Those x-rays that show that your cartilage in your thyroid area is becoming calcified, and that your ribs, where they should be just cartilage, are becoming calcified. And you can see them on x-ray when you should not have seen them in x-ray just 50 years ago. Now it's considered normal to see all those structures on x-ray because they're all calcified. That calcium that is depositing in soft tissues is the result of significant tissue acidity. The acids had to be neutralized with those carbonic salts. And we didn't have enough So we borrow calcium from the bones. It's depositing in our soft tissues, making us stiff. And we think it's normal to age non-gracefully. We think we should be stiff when we grow old, but that's not true. In nature, animals that are the oldest, about to die with graceful old age, are just as limber as the babies. There's no need to get stiff. If you know how to treat your body, you will always be nimble and limber. Always. What happens when those minerals are depositing in your blood vessels? They form arteriosclerosis. Your blood vessels become hardened. They don't dilate. And you don't allow your blood pressure to stay normal. It starts getting higher and higher because more blood volume against non-compliant blood vessels. That's blood pressure. Atherosclerosis also takes place whenever you had increased acidity because the acids damage the tissues. If the tissue is damaged, it gets inflamed. The inflammation leads to more free radical damage. Free radical damage leads to more inflammation. And you see how acidity creates damage to the tissues, which always leads to tissue debris, free radicals, and additional inflammation. It's a vicious cycle. Every time this happens, you will have damage to the walls of your blood vessels, which would lead to cholesterol deposition to try and patch up the damaged areas and make them smooth again so the blood will not have coagulation problems. That is atherosclerosis. Now you see how cardiovascular disease, blood pressure, kidney problems, diabetes, and even cancers, because cancers are always affected by free radical damage. And long-term inflammation plus insufficient oxygen from too much acidity are the hallmarks of cancer development. It was proven many years ago that if you put cancerous cells in an environment that is alkaline, the cancer cells will die within 3 hours. You just need to change your health, change the environment inside your body, the environment that the cells are living in, and stop suffocating them. It's not just acidity. Now, there are many other things that can cause inflammation and free radical damage. It's not just the pH. But once you have inflammation and free radical damage, you will also increase the acidity in the tissue because it will be stress. And stress leads to acidity, as we said earlier, because the body doesn't have too many mechanisms to handle different types of stress. All types of stress are handled in the same way. Stress hormones, always. And increased catabolism, increased rate of oxidation, making more energy and making more acid. Any type of stress on the system would lead to more acid. And any inflammation would lead to more stress. What else causes inflammation? Infections. Every time you have an infectious organism in your body, you'll be inflamed. Do you think you don't have an infection right now just because you're not coughing or sneezing in other people's faces? Think again. We all have infectious organisms in our body right now. Raise your hand if you have never taken antibiotics. Nobody to spare. Everybody here had antibiotics sometime. That means everybody has superbugs, because you can never get rid of the microbes without allowing a few to mutate faster than the drug could kill them. That's the advantage of colonies of billions of microbes. All it takes is a few to survive and make the mutation to survive those antibiotics. They will then replicate, multiply, form new colonies that will stay in your body forever. They're there. You don't feel them all the time, but they are dragging you down. They're taking some of your energy away. They're poisoning you slowly. And when your immune system is down, they will grow out of proportion and you will suffer more. Suddenly you'll say, gosh, I thought I didn't have that anymore, but I remember that little area where I was affected. I had those urinary tract infections, and they keep coming back. They have always been there. They just wait for the opportunity when your immune system is slightly lower. And then they grow. They use the opportunity. And we all have those colonies. And many of them have biofilm that they secrete, little mucilaginous liquid that surrounds them, preventing our own immune system from getting to them. They are there. And we cannot get rid of them because we took antibiotic in the past. They cause acidity because they secrete their own metabolic products. They also create energy, just like our own cells. But they make energy slightly differently from us and are more likely to make poison for us by doing that, especially if they're anaerobic microbes, when our own tissues are supposed to be aerobic. They make very toxic compounds that increase the acidity. So infection also leads to inflammation because whenever our immune system tries to fight those microbes, it secretes compounds that increase inflammation. Why? Because inflammation is our way to bring even more immune components to an area that's under attack. So we need the inflammation. But here we have it chronic instead of acute, and it is not doing any good. It's the only way the body knows to defend us. It does its job, but the job is too little, too late. And we end up chronically inflamed as a society. Add to that the fact that almost all of us eat too much animal food containing arachidonic acid, which leads to increased inflammation. Dairy products, flesh foods, we eat too much of those, we become even more inflamed. Add to that the fact that all of us eat a lot of grains, soybean oil, canola oil, corn oil, safflower oil, peanut oil, and their equivalent foods, we end up with even more omega-6, which is a precursor to the same arachidonic acid we eat directly from the flesh and dairy. We end up even more inflamed. And we don't have enough omega-3, which should come from our green leafy vegetables and from some seafood, which we cannot eat because it's too toxic with heavy metals, and PCBs, and dioxins, and petrochemicals. So we don't get enough omega-3, and we have too much omega-6. The little inflammation we started does not want to stop. And that inflammation leads to more free radical damage, more stress, and more acid. Which one is the chicken, which one is the egg, it doesn't matter. They all form the end result we're talking about. Now you see why the pH is not everything. It's just a part of a cascade that is multi-dimensional and involving numerous simultaneous processes. If you want to get omega-3 and you go for flax oil, it's extremely unstable, becomes rancid in 20 minutes in room temperature. There are very few healthy sources of stable, plant-based, unpolluted omega-3 oil. There's one that is coming very, very soon. And it is actually already in the United States, but will be shipped very, very shortly, which comes from perennial medicinal plant that has never been hybridized. It's still the heirloom variety that grows wild. And it gives seeds every year, and the seeds give oil that is 50% omega-3, 25% omega-9, which is the same as in olive oil, which is helping against blood pressure and helps brain function and memory. It's a perfect oil. It contains many medicinal components that are anti-cancer, anti-inflammation, antioxidant, antimicrobial, antiparasitical, antifungal, and anti-cancer. All of those components are in that medicinal plant. And it's coming very, very soon to United States.
What's the name of it?
It's called the clary sage seed oil. Seed oil, not the leaf, but the seed. It's patented by the Israeli government for 17 years.
Could you spell it?
Clary sage, or Salvia scleria. Clary sage. C-L-A-R-Y sage. I tasted it. It's delicious. Much tastier than flax oil has ever been. And it is completely stable, so it does not get rancid. In studies that were done measuring the peroxide level within it, it had 900% less peroxides than flax oil that was under the exact same conditions, cold pressed and exposed to oxygenation. Very, very stable and very medicinal. It will be the best omega-3 oil that is available right now anywhere in the world, and it is sustainable. It does not destroy the environment, the ecosystem, the wildlife, especially marine life, as is happening now, unfortunately, with the marine oil industry, which is jumping on the bandwagon of people's awareness of omega-3 necessity. Suddenly, everybody is so smart. They know about omega-3, and they destroy the earth and destroy their own body with extremely rancid, unstable, and toxic polluted fish oil or krill oil. You cannot rely on these oils anymore from the sea. Even if they were healthy and clean and active, just for the reason of ecology and sustainability. You cannot do that in good conscience and support those industries. You know who will be the last people to admit that to you? Your holistic doctors. Your holistic practitioners who have been recommending that you take fish oil for so many years. It will be the hardest thing for them to switch you to something else and to admit that even when they tell you that there are no heavy metals, there are no mercury traces that can be found in that oil, if you look at the fine print, you will see that there is a minimal detection level below which they cannot see what's in there. If that minimal detection level is, for example, 10 parts per million, it means every time you take that supplement of fish oil, it has 9 parts per million or 8 parts per million, which is way too much for a heavy metal that is so toxic your body cannot and should not be exposed to it in any level. Definitely not every day in a healthy supplement that you take repeatedly. There's a lot more that can be said about that. I'm just touching on that to show you how inflammation is so common and how it contributes to our pH problem. The infectious problem can also be maintained using a simple approach, which is consisting of the fractionated active components of medicinal oils. You know about the essential oil that people sometimes inhale? These are not the fractionated active components that have been scientifically validated. They contain the entire oil from the plant. They're not so active because every plant has its active components and its inhibitory components. Or else they will always be active and waste their activity on time that they don't need it. And when they need it, they won't have enough of these compounds left. Therefore, in every plant that is used medicinally for oil, you want to take the components that are active only and leave out the rest to have a pinpointed therapy that is potent on a very small amount, which also makes it more cost effective. If you get these oils and inhale them and just get the activated fractions that have been scientifically validated, then all they need to do is enter your circulation through the lungs. And they go very rapidly, not through the liver. Nothing has to be processed or digested. And they have been shown scientifically to inhibit the growth of microbes, viruses, fungus, even cancer cell lines like melanoma, mesothelioma. Very effective, and you just have to inhale them rather than swallow them. I carry them in my pocket all the time. Whenever I go in an airplane, when I only inhale the mucus of other people, which is what we do in an airplane, sorry, another inconvenient truth, we need to protect ourselves somehow. And these inhalers, simply you can put in your nostril and inhale a few times, and it kills any microbe that has entered your upper respiratory tract. Plus, if you inhale a little more of it, it gets into your circulation, and you have a message sent from the plant world, the same way that a tomato will protect itself from microbial attack. Whenever it gets a little nick, you do yourself with your own body by telling the microbial